I still remember the night everything came crashing down. It was a regular evening, but the atmosphere felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. Sarah and I had been married for nearly 10 years at that point, but something in our marriage wasn't quite right. It wasn't just the long hours I worked, or the distance between us, but something deeper, something unspoken. Let me introduce myself. I'm John, a white American male, raised in a small town, and for the most part, my life was what you would call normal. I met Sarah in college, and it was one of those stories you hear about, where the two people just click from the very first moment. We were young, ambitious, and head over heels in love. We got married soon after graduation and started our family. Things were great for a long time, or so I thought. But as life progressed, we found ourselves drifting apart. The pressure of work, the demands of our personal lives, and the responsibilities of raising a family took a toll on our connection. I began to feel like I was losing myself, and it was easier to turn away from the problems at home and drown myself in work, in other distractions. But it was only a matter of time before those distractions turned into something I should never have entertained in the first place: infidelity. It didn't start out that way. At first, it was harmless, just harmless flirtations, light conversation with someone at work, a smile from a stranger. But soon, those innocent moments escalated into something more. I didn't see the warning signs, the red flags, that I was crossing a line I couldn't come back from. I became tangled in multiple affairs with different women, each one reinforcing the lie I was telling myself, that I could have my cake and eat it too. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm here to tell you how it all unfolded and how, against all odds, I managed to salvage the love and respect I still had for Sarah. If there's one thing I've learned through this painful journey, it's that the hardest moments are often the ones that shape us the most. It wasn't long before Sarah began to notice something was off. Little things at first: late nights, strange behavior, a lack of intimacy. Then, one night, I came home to find her sitting on the couch with a look on her face that I'll never forget. She had found the evidence: text messages, emails, phone calls. The trust that had been the foundation of our relationship was shattered in an instant. The moment she confronted me felt like a lifetime. I could see the pain in her eyes, the disbelief, the hurt that she had been living with a man who had betrayed her in the most unimaginable way. I'll never forget the words she said: "How could you do this to us?" To me, I felt smaller than I had ever felt before. The guilt consumed me. My heart ached as I watched Sarah cry, as she asked me how I could throw away everything we had built together for temporary pleasure. I didn't have an answer. There were no excuses, no justifications for what I had done. It was all my fault. All I could do was apologize, but I knew that mere words weren't going to fix this. In that moment, I made a promise to myself that I would fight for our marriage. I wasn't ready to let go of the love we shared, not just because of the history we had together but because I knew deep down that Sarah was the one I was meant to be with. Despite everything I had done, I didn't want to lose her. We made the decision to seek help. We both knew we couldn't fix this on our own. So, we turned to marriage counseling. It wasn't easy. The sessions were intense and uncomfortable. It felt like we were opening up wounds that had been buried for far too long, but I knew it was necessary. The process wasn't about just me fixing my mistakes, it was about understanding the root causes of why I had betrayed Sarah in the first place. It was about learning to communicate again, about being vulnerable, and most importantly, about rebuilding the trust one had broken. Sarah, too, was in a lot of pain. She didn't know if she could ever forgive me. And I didn't expect her to. All I could do was show her that I was willing to work through my mistakes, step by step. I made a commitment to cut ties with all the women I had been seeing. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the only way forward. For the first time in a long time, I focused on Sarah. I gave her my full attention, not just as a wife, but as the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. But the road to healing wasn't smooth. Every day was a struggle. There were moments when we both wanted to give up, to walk away from the pain. There were nights when I lay awake, questioning if our marriage could survive this betrayal. But through it all, Sarah stayed. She didn't give up on me. She fought for our marriage with everything she had. And that made all the difference. We both learned that healing takes time. It wasn't a quick fix, and it wasn't something we could just brush under the rug. We had to face our issues head-on, and it took a lot of patience and effort from both of us. But over time, we began to rebuild our connection. It wasn't the same as before, but it was something better. We had been tested, and we had come through it stronger. I won't pretend that everything is perfect now. Marriage takes work, even without the added challenges we faced. But I can say that I am proud of where we are today. I am loyal to Sarah now, fully and completely. And I know that she is the one I want to spend the rest of my life with. In the end, we didn't let infidelity destroy us. We allowed it to be a lesson, a painful but valuable lesson that taught us what really matters: trust, loyalty, and the willingness to fight for the one you love. I'm grateful for Sarah's strength, for her willingness to forgive me, and for the love we share. I know now that no matter what challenges come our way, we can face them together. The days following the discovery of my infidelity felt like an endless cycle of emotional turmoil. The pain Sarah and I were both feeling was raw, unrelenting, and suffocating. Every corner of our home felt heavy, like a constant reminder of the breach in trust that hung between us. The decision to go to marriage counseling was, without a doubt, the hardest yet most necessary choice we made together. At first, I wasn't sure what to expect. Would it really help? Could we ever go back to the way things were? I was so deep in shame, guilt, and fear that I couldn't imagine a future beyond the wreckage I had caused. But Sarah, despite her anger and heartbreak, agreed to try. She wanted to heal, and I knew she had every right to walk away, but instead, she gave me the chance to prove that I could change. Our first counseling session was, to put it lightly, intense. Sarah was angry, understandably so. She didn't hold back, and she shouldn't have. I sat there, facing her and the counselor, trying not to crumble under the weight of her disappointment and the reality of what I had done. The counselor, a calm and empathetic woman named Dr. Harper, facilitated the conversation in a way that felt safe but also challenging. She didn't let me off the hook for my actions. If anything, she pushed me to confront the deeper reasons behind my infidelity, what led me to seek comfort outside our marriage, what I was trying to avoid, and what I hadn't been dealing with emotionally. For me, the root cause wasn't about the women I had been with. It wasn't about lust or physical attraction. It was about escaping the growing disconnection between Sarah and me, the emotional distance I had created by prioritizing everything else but her. As Dr. Harper guided us, I realized how much I had neglected to nurture the emotional intimacy in our marriage, how I had hidden behind the distractions of work and the facade of being the perfect husband. But perfection doesn't exist, and the truth was, I had been avoiding the deeper conversations we needed to have to stay connected. The sessions were painful but necessary. It wasn't just about me confessing my wrongdoings and seeking forgiveness. It was about us, as a couple, learning how to rebuild something that had been shattered. Every session was a step forward, even though it felt like we were stumbling more often than not. Sarah, for her part, was a mix of hurt, anger, and uncertainty. She had every right to be. I had broken her heart, and I had broken her trust. But what amazed me was her resilience. She didn't give up on us, not immediately, at least. There were days when she would cry, asking me why I had done what I did, why I had chosen to betray her and our family. And I had no answers that could undo the hurt. All I could do was sit with her, hold her hand, and listen. The listening part was crucial. I had been so caught up in my own emotional void that I had stopped listening to her, stopped hearing her needs. In counseling, I learned that to rebuild trust, I had to listen without becoming defensive or making excuses. It wasn't about me, it was about us. We both needed to be heard. At the same time, I had to take full responsibility for my actions. I had to understand that my infidelity wasn't just a mistake, it was a symptom of deeper issues I had been ignoring. I had to own that, and it wasn't easy. I had spent years running from my emotions, burying my feelings, and pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. But now, sitting in that counseling room, I had to face everything head-on, without the ability to escape. It was uncomfortable, but it was also liberating in a way. By confronting my mistakes, I began the long journey toward truly understanding who I was and why I had done what I did. One of the most pivotal moments in our counseling was when Sarah shared how she felt. She told me that, despite everything, she still loved me, but she didn't know if she could ever fully trust me again. That hit me like a ton of bricks. It was as if I had been living in a bubble of self-pity and guilt, but when she spoke those words, it became real. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and I had shattered it. Now, I had to do everything in my power to earn it back. But how do you rebuild trust? How do you repair something so fragile after it's been shattered? The answer wasn't simple, and it wasn't quick. The process involved doing everything I could to show Sarah that I was committed to changing, committed to being a better husband, a better partner. I had to show her, through my actions, that I was serious about cutting ties with the past. That meant no more lies, no more half-truths, and certainly no more affairs. Every moment I had with Sarah was an opportunity to rebuild that connection, to show her that she was my priority, not a consolation prize. We started small. We set aside time every week to talk, real conversations, not just about our day or the kids but about how we were feeling, about our needs, about our relationship. These weren't easy conversations. They often led to tears, frustration, and moments of doubt. But they were necessary. For the first time in years, we were opening up to each other in a way we hadn't before. Sarah also set boundaries, and I respected them. There were times when she needed space, and I gave it to her. There were moments when she would ask questions about the past, and I answered honestly, even though the truth was painful to hear and even harder to say. But slowly, through these conversations, we began to heal. Alongside counseling, I committed to cutting out all the people I had been involved with outside of our marriage. I deleted the numbers, stopped the secretive meetings, and made a vow to myself that I would never cross that line again. There was no place for other women in my life anymore, not while Sarah was trying to heal, not while our marriage was on the line. The hardest part of all was learning how to forgive myself. I had hurt the person I loved most, and I couldn't undo it. But I couldn't let that guilt define me, either. I had to find a way to move forward, to prove that I could change, not just for Sarah but for myself as well. I couldn't stay stuck in the past, regretting my mistakes. I had to use those mistakes as the foundation for a better version of myself. Over time, I noticed small changes. We began to laugh together again, to share moments of joy, to be more affectionate. The intimacy wasn't all the way back yet, but it was growing. We had more patience with each other. We argued less and listened more. We had rough days, of course, but we learned to face them together, as a team. It wasn't always perfect, and there were still moments of doubt. Sometimes, I would wonder if Sarah would ever truly forgive me or if the scars would always remain. But we kept going, one step at a time. Every day I stayed committed, every day I showed up for her, I could see her starting to believe again. We were making progress, but we still had a long road ahead of us. It wasn't about getting back to normal, it was about creating something new, something stronger, something more honest. And slowly but surely, I knew that we were heading in the right direction. I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you who has followed along so far. Your support, comments, and encouragement have meant the world to me. It's been a long and difficult journey, but your messages have given me the strength to keep going, to keep sharing this part of my life. I hope this final chapter resonates with you, and for anyone struggling with their own relationships, I hope it brings some light and hope. It's been a few years since the darkest moment of my life, the moment when I thought my marriage was beyond repair. When I look back now, it feels like a lifetime ago, and yet, it's still fresh in my memory. But the difference now is that it no longer feels like a scar I carry around with me every day. It feels like a part of my past, a chapter I've closed because I've finally learned the lessons I was meant to learn. In the years following our counseling sessions, Sarah and I slowly, but surely, rebuilt what had been broken. It wasn't a smooth or easy road, but as time went on, we both realized that the rewards of our hard work were far greater than we could have imagined. It was no longer just about repairing our marriage, it was about transforming it into something stronger, something deeper. The first signs of healing came from the small things, the things that once seemed insignificant but now felt monumental. I began to see the sparkle in Sarah's eyes again, the way she would smile at me from across the room, the way she would reach for my hand when we were out in public. These little moments, these small acts of connection, meant more to me than any grand gesture could have. One of the most rewarding moments for me came when Sarah told me, "I trust you again." It wasn't easy for her to say those words, and I knew it. It took years of proving myself, of showing her that my love was unwavering, that I was fully committed to her, but hearing those words was like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I had spent so much time trying to earn her trust back, and now, finally, it felt like we were in a place where we could move forward, truly move forward. We learned to forgive each other, but we also learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means letting go of the anger and pain that once consumed us. Sarah forgave me, yes, but I also had to forgive myself. That wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had to let go of the guilt and shame I had carried for so long. It wasn't just about making things right for her, it was about making things right for myself, too. I had to believe that I was worthy of love and redemption, that my past mistakes didn't define who I was now. Our relationship evolved into something new, something stronger than it was before. We started communicating openly and honestly in ways we had never done before. We shared our fears, our dreams, and our frustrations, and we listened to each other without judgment. There was no more hiding, no more pretending. We became vulnerable with each other in ways that deepened our bond. It wasn't just about love anymore, it was about partnership, friendship, and mutual respect. We also prioritized our relationship in a way we had never done before. It wasn't just about getting by or surviving. We made time for each other, even in the midst of our busy lives. We took short trips together, just the two of us, to reconnect and create new memories. We began doing the things that had brought us joy in the early years of our marriage, and it reminded us of the love we shared. The biggest reward, though, was the rediscovery of our intimacy, not just physical intimacy, but emotional intimacy. We had both been closed off for so long, guarding ourselves against the hurt, but once we broke through that barrier, our connection became deeper than I ever thought possible. We found new ways to express our love for each other, ways that went beyond the physical. We would talk for hours, laughing together, reminiscing about our early days, and just enjoying each other's presence. Our family life began to feel more harmonious as well. The tension that once hung in the air seemed to dissolve, and our children felt it too. They saw us laughing more, spending quality time together, and they saw their mother and father truly in love. They saw what it meant to work through challenges, to stay committed, and to never give up. It wasn't just about us anymore, it was about creating a healthy, loving environment for our kids to grow up in, to show them that even the toughest times can be overcome if you put in the effort. We also became stronger as individuals. I learned to better understand my own emotional needs and how to communicate them to Sarah. I learned how to truly listen, not just with my ears, but with my heart. Sarah, too, grew. She became more confident in expressing her emotions and setting boundaries when needed. We both became better versions of ourselves, individually and as a couple. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, though. There were still moments of doubt, moments when we questioned whether we could keep going. But instead of turning to old patterns of avoidance or frustration, we learned to face those doubts together. We had built a foundation strong enough to withstand the occasional storm. And even when we stumbled, we knew we could get back up and keep moving forward. The real victory came when I realized I was no longer tempted by the distractions that had once pulled me away from my marriage. I had broken free from the toxic cycle of seeking validation from other people. I no longer needed to fill the void with temporary escapes. Sarah and I had become each other's safe place, our haven in a world full of distractions and temptations. My heart, my loyalty, and my focus were firmly planted in our marriage, and that was a gift I never took for granted. Looking back on everything, I can confidently say that the rewards of our hard work and commitment were worth every tear, every moment of doubt, every struggle. Our marriage was no longer just a relationship built on convenience or routine, it was a bond that had been tested, stretched, and strengthened. We had learned what it meant to truly commit, to work through the tough times, and to honor each other in ways we never had before. We weren't perfect, and we still had our challenges. But we knew that as long as we continued to put in the effort, as long as we continued to love and support each other, our marriage would remain unbreakable. Sarah and I are still together today, stronger than ever. Our love story didn't end when I made my mistakes. In many ways, it only truly began after I took responsibility for my actions and we chose to fight for our marriage. We're not the same people we were when we first got married, but in many ways, we're better. We've learned to appreciate each other in ways we never did before, and we've built a relationship that is based on trust, loyalty, and mutual respect. And that's the reward, the peace of knowing that no matter what comes our way, we'll face it together, stronger than ever.